doing, man?
I'm great.
It's been quite a while, and we go back a long way. Great to see that smiling face again.
It's great to see you too. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, me too, guys. Thank you, G and David.
Of course.
Jake, you grew up in Texas. You had told me. Are you from a showbiz family? When did you get started? Can you give me a little bit of what inspired you in theater and talk to that a little bit?
I can. My gosh, like how long do we have? I could talk about that for like an hour alone.
Please
Yeah,
do.
I'm
I turn into a pumpkin at midnight, so if you get, before that, we're good.
yeah, I am originally from Texas. However, my family moved to Nashville, Tennessee when I was in middle school. So I went to high school in
Wow.
Nashville, but originally from the Dallas area. And I started acting when I was 8. My mom saw
Salud.
that I was, yeah, she saw that I was sort of a creative kid with ADD and didn't know what to do with me. And so she saw an ad for children's acting classes at the Dallas Theater Center and signed me up. And I
Oh,
was just like fell in love from day one. I knew from that moment what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
wow.
I grew up being in shows there, so I did lots of shows as a kid actor at the Dallas Theater Center and the Dallas Children's Theater.
They
Um,
did. I don't know if you saw. They did this production of Les Mis with like contemporary costumes. They had
yeah,
Javert in a highway patrol costume with the
yeah.
helmet. That was so cool. If I recall correctly, though, which was I mean horrible. I mean, just you never know. Like it got horrible reviews.
Yeah, I didn't see it. It looked interesting. Like I would have
It
liked to
looked
have seen
it
it,
looked
but
beautiful.
it looked cool. But I don't know. I don't know if they tried to set it in a different time period or if it was just the costuming. I don't know
Right.
because I think you can do like I've seen people do really cool things with like taking a period piece and keeping it in that time period,
Sure. I mean,
but using
Shakespeare,
sort
that they
of
do that all the time. I mean, I saw this amazing production. It was for the National Theater Live. It was, I think, one of the Richards. They did it with like military.
Mhm.
Like, they always do the
oh
coolest
yeah,
things. So, but you only see that in London
Right.
in
yeah.
that those huge theaters. So the fact that this beautiful, this like amazing regional theater that is like really well known, the Dallas Theater Center, to do this, I remember being blown away by the production shots.
Wow.
I'm sorry, that was just something
No, no worries.
I've always wanted to talk about when
Awesome.
So
it was
I
amazing.
grew up
Yeah.
at the Dallas Theater Center. I mean, that's where I found my love for theater. Had amazing mentors and theater
Any
educators
shows
there.
we would have heard of, Jake? Any
You know, primarily like I was in the teens children's theater. So I did like I played Edmund in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe there. I did my first professional show ever was as an Oompa Loompa in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Hey, all
Hey.
Um,
right. I've seen, yeah,
but I
there you
did
go.
Colin and the Secret Garden.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember all kinds of stuff until we moved to Nashville when I was in middle school. But I was that obnoxious 9-year-old that would tell everybody I'm going to be on Broadway when I grow up. And like
Listen,
if
it just
they,
came out of your mouth.
Exactly.
excuse me, Broadway, as we were saying earlier.
Exactly. Exactly.
And but you know, I meant it. I mean, I was just solely focused on that's what I was going to do. And for the people that wouldn't take me seriously, even at that young age, I would get very annoyed with them. Um,
Can we talk
Fucking-
about that for a second? Because I've been dealing with it for the past 2 weeks specifically with everything with us as artists. How did you overcome it, or how did you deal with
And
it?
did that stay with you, like from such a young age? Did that stay with you into it? Was that something that you had to keep battling
Yeah.
as
I
you
was
got older?
always incredibly driven. You guys know this. In order to do this as a career, like you have to have the drive and the passion, and you have to believe in yourself
Mhm.
because it is a tough thing to do, and rejection is just part of the everyday norm of pursuing it. Right? I mean,
Right.
Right.
I tell like students that want to do this, I'm like, look, you're gonna not get the job far more than you're gonna get the job. You know, you're going to not get a callback far more many times than you're going to get a callback. And um, none of that really has to do with you or your talent. It's just the business. It's just if are you the right type? Are you the right age? Is this the right thing? Do you fit the breakdown that was already in the director's mind before you came in the room? Um, so yeah, I mean, we're all insecure, right? I mean, every performer I know is insecure in some way, and so um, So yeah, I'd say I always battled, with that. If you feel you could be 100% happy, fulfilled, and satisfied doing something else, then go do that, because this path is hard. But if you were like I was, and that if you don't go after this, you're going to spend the rest of your life asking yourself what would have happened had I gone after it. Well, then get your ass to New York and go after it. Like,
Thank
gotta
you.
do it.
Wow.
Exactly.
So
What did
you got
how
your
did
ass
you
to
get
New
there?
York in 2002.
Yeah. How did you get
That's
there?
right. Yeah. So I went to high school in Nashville, and then spent a couple of years in Nashville. I guess singing with what could best be described as a country music boy band.
Fun.
And,
Oh,
I love it.
nice.
yeah, I mean, so random, right? I was actually sang the national anthem at my high school's basketball game, and was approached by somebody afterwards, and ended up singing with this group. And we actually had a record deal. And like so many Nashville
Wow.
stories, it sort of all fell apart. Like it kind of it fizzled out. Like Time Warner and AOL merged, and they shut the label down. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
so I was
Alright.
trying to figure out what my next step was going to be. And I always knew I wanted to go to New York anyway. I always felt like I was someone impersonating a country singer. And I had a friend that was working the auditions for AMDA, for the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. And I just went because he was working the auditions. And so I went and auditioned, and they offered me a full tuition scholarship. And so
Wow.
I was like, okay, well, this is my free ticket to New York. So
Congratulations.
That's how I ended up in New York, and I did the 2-year program there at AMDA.
Can I ask you a very sensitive question?
Absolutely.
I don't know if this is just the new age of AMDA, but it's a shame. A lot of people call it scamda. And I don't know if this is something you've heard. So I want to know what we'd love to know what your experience was like over there. And because I've heard, I haven't heard firsthand stories, but I've heard secondhand and thirdhand stories of people basically having all their money wasted over there.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you have to remember, I was there 20 years ago, so I don't really
Right.
know what it's like now. I can tell you, I think it's gotten a lot bigger now, and I can see how that might not be the best thing. When a program gets too big, it's much harder to really keep tabs on what's being taught, et cetera. I can tell you my experience. I had wonderful teachers at AMDA, and I feel like it's one of those programs, just like any conservatory program, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. If I'm speaking very frank, like, I think there were students there that probably should not have been there, that were there because they were paying the tuition, and the tuition was going to the school. But some of the most talented people I've ever known in my life, I met at AMDA. Eric Schneider, who was in Jersey Boys with me, went to AMDA.
100%.
And Marissa Rosen. That's how we talked about her whenever we met. So that's how Marissa and I met. We went to AMDA together and have been like best friends ever since. And Marissa's like one of the most insanely talented people I know.
Insane. Yeah.
But I had fantastic instructors there. I learned a ton from the teachers that I had there. I made great connections in graduating from there. I got my first agent through a contact from a teacher that I had at AMDA. I just reconnected recently with my voice teacher from there, Wendy Sharp, who's the head of the vocal program there, and she's phenomenal.
This wasn't supposed to be like this. This is not a question that's like supposed to knock AMDA, but this is the first time I've met someone who's actually gone there.
Oh yeah, no, and please, I mean, we've all heard the scamda thing. I mean, I think that's something that we're all well aware of. But no, I mean, my experience was very positive.
I actually never heard that before. But with my company, we try to recruit a lot of like people from different art schools.
You get from AMDA a lot?
I went there a few times to table and to get people to sign up to join our company, and the team there was just so nice and so welcoming. So I'm surprised to hear that it's not a good experience for people.
Now, who knows? It could be a few bad eggs who are just spreading lies and rumors, but you never know. But I'm glad to hear good words about it.
So you started in some local and off-Broadway plays after that?
Yeah, so
that a little bit.
My first professional job, and again, this was a contact through AMDA. It was through the accompanist in my musical theater class. My final semester was music directing. a show called Dragons, which was sort of this forgotten Sheldon Harnick musical. And I was like a kid who was just getting out of school. I was like, are you kidding me? Of course I'll come in and audition for it. And so I booked it. And so that's how I got my equity card.
You were there in Montclair, New Jersey, right near where I grew up in Clifton.
Yeah, so that was at Luna Stage in New Jersey. And I was a kid in a candy store. Like I was in rehearsal with Sheldon Harnick every day. And had just gotten out of school. And what was crazy is I felt like some of the other younger cast members weren't really taking, I don't know if they were intimidated or not taking advantage of that, but I would see Sheldon sitting all by himself on a break, like doing nothing. And I would just go sit and talk to him and say, hey, so when you wrote She Loves Me, what was that like?
When you wrote Fiddler on the Roof, what was that like?
And he would just, just tell me stories, and it was amazing. It was an amazing first professional job. So yeah, I just bummed around different regional theaters in and around New York and outside of New York. I went up to the Algonquin Playhouse in Maine.
Wow.
I worked at the Flat Rock Playhouse in North Carolina several times.
It's basically the unofficial home to all Jersey Boys people.
It is.
Yeah,
the version there.
So I did Forever Plaid there.
Oh
my God!
I did Forever Plaid a couple times. Whenever I had to swing Jersey Boys and had to learn all 4 harmony parts on every song in the whole score, like I credit Plaid with training my ear to be able to do that. Even though I only played one role in Plaid.
Those harmonies are tight, huh?
They are tight and they are hard. And so that experience became quite useful once I got to Jersey Boys.
So how did you finally get into to Jersey Boys from from your theater?
Oh wait,
experience?
Jake, were you in Jersey Boys?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, here we go. That's my wife's
Were you in
favorite
the
joke.
producer's film before Jersey Boys, or were you in the producer's film before Jersey Boys, or?
I was. And I'm so glad to finally be talking about Jersey Boys to people who want to hear my stories, who haven't heard them.
Oh my God, please. This is what we're here. We are here to let you have a platform, a box.
So,
people are listening. It's true.
I'll tell you, like, it became a joke. It's a joke with my wife too, because when we started, we'll get to this later, but when we started our theater in Nashville, and I've told Rick Ellis this. I was like, Rick, like, hey, I got to tell you, like, I'm not overstating this. Like when I would sit down and meet with people who'd be like, who are you? Why should I give you any money to help you start a theater? Like I didn't have some sort of a name. I didn't have whatever. But the one thing I could say is I was in Jersey Boys on Broadway and I had them. Like, because everybody knows it, everybody loves it. And they're like, wait a minute. Oh, I saw that show. I love that show. And like, I was like, dude, it was the icebreaker. It was the door opener every single time.
It was the big 3 of your life.
But yes, so Howard, I did the producer's movie before Jersey Boys. And I was just in one number. I was in the Springtime for Hitler number. They did an open call and they were looking for guys who were exactly 6 feet tall. And I'm 6'1". But I went anyway because I looked even more Aryan back then.
Aryan, yes.
I went and I forget, I don't know if we sang first or danced first or whatever, but like it was going well. And then at the end of it, they had us line up against a piece of tape on the wall, right? And I noticed that Christina, I can't remember her last name. She was one of Susan Stroman's associates. And I noticed that she was not looking at anybody's feet. She was just, they were trying to get through it quickly. So they were just looking at the tape on the wall. So I full on spread my legs apart. Like when I stood up against the wall and like totally got the check mark. And so then when it came time for the callback, they weren't really measuring people. And I wasn't so substantially taller that they could really necessarily tell. Because we were going,
no reason to remeasure you.
No, so they didn't remeasure anybody. So in the callback, they like do how they do with the dance callback. They broke us into like groups of 4 and 5, and like we did it all. And remember, we had to like step forward and like say our name with a German accent. And Susan Stroman was there, and so I did the callback, and then I got it, and we go to rehearsal. We rehearsed at the new 42nd Street Studios, which is also where we rehearsed Jersey Boys. We learned the whole number. We're rehearsing it, and then Susan Stroman comes in to see it and clean it up and whatever.
The Susan Stroman.
Yes,
Yeah.
the director, for those who don't know, yes, of the producer's movie.
So-
Yeah.
I'm in the second row of like the Nazi kick line, right? So
Yeah.
we're doing it, and she sees it all, and she's like, She's like, okay, hold on, I want to change up the order here. She pointed at me, and she was like, Jake, right? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, I want you to come up here. I want you. She put me in the very front, in the very center. She noticed that I was a little bit taller.
And she loved it.
That's what you do. You have to guide off of the tallest person. So not only did I beat the system and get in the movie, but I got positioned
front and
center.
It's springtime for Hitler with Will Ferrell.
This
Great story, man.
leads me to ask a question though. Was she on board with this casting notice of being exactly 6 feet?
Well, they wanted them all. They wanted it to be like the Rockettes, right? They wanted all of these all of these kick line Nazis to be the exact same height, and so it was so much fun. I mean, Mel Brooks was on the set with us, and it was only 4 days. Like it was 2 days of rehearsal, 2 days of shooting, but
Wunderbar.
I'll never forget. They shot this on actual film. It wasn't on digital. So
shit.
actual film is so expensive, and basically they told us like every take we do costs, I don't remember, some stupid amounts of thousands of dollars. And right before we did several rehearsals, and we were about to do the first actual take of Springtime for Hitler, and Susan Stroman gets on her bullhorn and says, Jake, meet me at the front of the stage. And I was like, okay. So I go down, and she was like, everything's great, but listen, you're in the very front and the very center. Everyone is guiding off of you. So I need your arm here, and I need the angle perfect. And she was like, I need you to be perfect. And I was like,
wow.
Susan Stroman. Oh my God, Jake, it's amazing.
Freaking terrified.
Oh no.
But it went well. I think I was at least as close to perfect as she needed me to be. But it was super fun.
That's like Danny Austin telling you, you're front and center. Everyone's gonna be you're gonna be guiding people's heel twists.
Yeah,
you gotta get them right.
I love Danny Austin.
Wow, beautiful. So now we get to Jersey Boys.
Yes.
So in 2004, I saw a casting notice in Backstage magazine. This is for you young kids. This is when you had to go to like the actual newsstand and buy a copy of Backstage magazine. And it was for Untitled Four Seasons musical.
Wow.
And they were doing a true open call. It was equity and non-equity, which at least back in my day, that was really rare for a project of this size to do a true open call with union and non-union like that. And so I saw it. The Four Seasons are my mom's favorite band of all time. We talked about that before. I grew up listening to them with her. She always says that they were my Beatles. And I'm like, Mom, it's okay. They're big enough in their own right. You don't have to say they were your Beatles. They were the Four Seasons. They were just as big of a deal. And so, and my mom was also the president of the Monkees fan club in high school. I don't know why.
Wow. Well, okay. But, they're the real ones. That's awesome.
Immediately, I was like, well, they're doing a musical about the Four Seasons. Of course, I have to show up at this audition. So at the time, I'm a baritone. I'm a baritone who spent his entire life learning how to sing higher. And especially back then, my voice was lower. Like, honestly, my voice has gotten higher throughout the years, I think mainly because of always having to sing higher.
So now you can play Frankie.
Although I don't know, I doubled all of Frankie's vocals when I would do the Joey track, but that's the high falsetto stuff is not the hard stuff. It's the higher.
It's the chest,
at least for me. But especially back then, I could sing like legit bass notes, and so I knew that they needed a Nick, right? So I was like, I bet there aren't a whole lot of guys who can really hit like those legit bass notes. So that's what I'm going to go in for. So I went to the true open call, waited in line forever, and I auditioned for Eric, who is one of Tara Rubin's associates.
Eric Woodall, right?
Eric Woodall. And I said, hey, I know it says like, 50s, 60s, but like, do you want to hear like some legit bass notes, or do you want me to sing something more like golden oldies? And he was like, what do you got that can show bass? So I sang 16 Tons, which I had done in Forever Plaid, right?
Oh, wow,
Okay.
wow.
I said, this isn't really 50s and 60s, but like there isn't a whole lot out there. And yes, this was before you could just go on music notes and print out whatever song you wanted and whatever key you wanted. So I was like, there isn't a whole lot out there that's real bassy. So I sang that, and he was like, wow. He's like, okay, that was great. He's like, okay, now can you sing something more sort of golden oldies for me? And first of all, this was like a 16 bar or whatever. And like he kept me in there
God.
and had me sing 2 whole songs. And so I sang Dream Lover by Bobby Darin.
Oh,
Wow,
nice.
wow.
Bobby Darin, nice.
And he was like, okay, so if this goes further for you, find something more golden oldies. Don't be so funny with it. Cause I think I was being kind of funny with 16 Tons. He was like, just play it more straight or whatever. And at that point I was like, okay, so I'm getting a callback if he's telling me that.
Hey.
You know?
So be more Nick and less Hank.
Yeah.
Hey, that's funny.
So I get called back, and I go in, and I think it's the majority of the creative team at this point. And they haven't even written the script. So I remember, again, back in the day, children, when we had to go to the casting director's office to pick up the Xerox sides. And there were, I still have, I looked for them briefly tonight because I thought it'd be fun to find them, but I know I have them somewhere, but I couldn't find them.
Your original sides?
Yeah. And
nice.
most of them never did make the show. Like these were monologues that Rick and Marshall wrote just for the auditions. There's a whole monologue that Gaudio has about Sinatra and the story about his pool.
His pool?
Yeah, there's this, man, I can't remember it now, but there's a great story about Gaudio and Sinatra in a pool. But I,
yeah.
So I went and I did the next audition. No, I can't but remember if Des was there for that one. It might have been the next one, but I got down to the final callback for La Jolla.
Yeah.
And always for Nick. They were reading me for Nick. When I got to the final callback for La Jolla, and they sent us songs from the show, right? And they wanted, I think we had to do Big Girls, but just to sing, but I was singing the melody, but it was for Nick. And so I was like, maybe I'll sing the Big Girls Don't Cry. Maybe I'll like take that down an octave, like just to like see, like, I don't know, like just to be silly or whatever. Which I did. I sang the verses normally, and then I took it down an octave. And you know, it's one of those things where I'm always a big fan of taking smart risks in an audition. And that was one example of one that just did not land at all.
Oh no.
But I was like, yeah, this isn't working. This is not working. This is not working at all. But it was okay because they had seen me before. I think they still like, you know, enjoyed it. Des wanted me to do Nick's monologue, which a version of it is in the show. It's when he talks about making his kids think he was their uncle.
Uncle Nicky.
But it was much longer than what it ended up being in the show. And I did it, and I felt pretty good about it. And Des was like, great. I'm going to have you do that again. And this is when you start getting nervous, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, like the 2-time Tony Award winning director is now working with me.
The Des McAnuff.
Which means like they're actually interested. And I was pretty young and green at this point. I mean, I had done stuff regionally, but he's like, I want you to do this again. And he's like, I'm assuming you don't have kids. And I was like, no. He said, this is the first time you have said this to anyone ever. This is the first time you have ever confessed this or said this out loud. And there's a lot of shame in that, but there's also a lot of freedom in that. And this is something that you are not proud of and you've never told anyone. I did the monologue again. And, you know, I mean, you guys are actors, so you know when you just feel so connected to something in a moment. And I will never forget.
It's an out-of-body experience.
Yes. And something took over, and I will never forget Des looked at me and he said, yeah, that was it. That was perfect. So the show went to La Jolla, and when they were coming to New York, they were going to cast another swing. So they called me in for that and had me read several other things. And I think they sent me Earth Angel and a bunch of other stuff. And so I went in for that. And it was another one of Tara's associates. It wasn't even the creative team. And they called my agent and said, hey, We love him. We just don't really think he's right for a swing, which is hilarious and ironic because of what eventually happened.
Oh my God.
Then the first national tour rolled around. And I was in North Carolina doing Thoroughly Modern Millie. My agent called and said, they're casting the first national tour. Can you get to New York next week? And I was like, is this a pre-screen or are we talking like creative team? Is Des going to be in the room? He was like, nope, they've assured me Des is going to be on the room. I told them that you're out of town, that you'd be flying in for it. And so the girl playing Millie, Allison Spratt, she was also being called in for Jersey Boys and had been in for it several times. So the two of us and her now husband, Michael Pierce, had subbed playing bass on the show several times.
What?
And so
shit.
she and
Holy
I flew
shit.
the people at the Flat Rock Playhouse, shout out Flat Rock Playhouse. They were amazing to let us do this. Like we had to fly in the night before, and then it was either our final dress or our first preview was the next night. So we were getting back on a plane right after our morning appointments to try to make it back to North Carolina. So we flew in, like got in late the night before. I got like 0 sleep. Went to the audition the next morning, and they were kind enough to give me one of the very first slots because they knew I had to get back to North Carolina. And I decided I was going to sing something different that time. And so I chose Silence is Golden. So, but when I got in there, Des was running late. So Des was not in the room. I paid $800 for that plane ticket because it was last minute. And I was like, are you kidding me? Des isn't even in the room. And, but Ron Melrose was in the room, and so was Richard Hester.
And Richard, yes.
So I sang Silence is Golden, and Ron, again, one of those moments I'll never forget, he said, that's maybe the smartest audition choice for this show I've ever seen. And
surprising.
Wow.
But
and
great.
what I didn't realize is Ron loves that song.
Yes.
So I did that, and then I read several of Nick's scenes with Richard, and got some great direction from Richard. Tara Rubin was in the room. I was upset that Des wasn't in the room, but I felt really good about everything I was doing. And then Tara asked me if I would just step outside and wait for a bit because they knew that I had to like fly out. So I step outside and I see Des coming in, and so Tara comes out, and then she asks Des to come in the room with her. They're in there for a couple of minutes, and she comes out, and I'm like, come on, okay, great. They're going to ask me to come back in and do this for Des. And she was like, Jake, we're good. Thank you so much. And I was like, so
you're just tossing and turning. Yeah.
So I did not get the first national tour. My agent calls one day and he says, all right, they're doing a second national tour of Jersey Boys, and they want to see you again. But here's the thing, like there's a new casting associate on it. So they want to pre-screen everybody. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I've been in front of the entire creative team, like how many times, like a pre-screen. And so Mary Sugarman was the new casting associate that they had put on the project, who is the best person on the face of the planet. So Mary, if you ever hear this, I love you.
Sweet.
So she, so I go in, and it's just Mary, and I think it was Ron's assistant that was there from like the music department. So I sang, and then I read, and I remember Mary going, wow, that was a really great read. You need to hold on to those sides. And I was like, okay, cool. So at least I passed the test of the new casting associate.
Got the guts. I passed the test.
Yeah.
You're killing it tonight. Yeah.
And then, guys, it was just a series of calls. I mean, I think then there was a callback that I think Richard was there, and Kelly Devine maybe was there. And then there was another callback that was with Des and more of the creative team. And Nick, always for Nick this whole time. And at that second callback, when the creative team was in the room, Mary came out and she said, okay, here's the deal. And this is what I loved about Mary. She would always just shoot really straight with you. She was like, Steve Gouveia, who is Hank on Broadway,
Right.
is probably going to be Nick. Like Des loves him. And so, but they love you. And so I'm going to have you read a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, okay,
Bet.
And so I started reading other things. And then there was the final callback. And the final callback, I mean, they sent me like every side for every character in the show. And I horribly sick a couple days before. And so they wanted me to play guitar. And I hadn't done that for them yet. And I do play guitar. I mean, I would not really consider myself a guitar player, but I do play a bit. Ron called me over to the table and he said, because Gaudio was there. This is the first time I auditioned for Gaudio.
Oh, shit.
And he was like, hey, can you sing Silence is Golden? And I was like, sure. And so fortunately, it was in a key. It was in a key that was pretty comfortable. I was worried that they were going to want me to do Cry for Me and Oh What a Night. And and I just knew that in the shape I was in, like G's and A flats were not going to be happening. But Silence is Golden was cool. And so I got through that. And Ron, he was so funny. He was like a kid. He was like, Jake, who wrote that song? And I was like, well, he's sitting right there. Bob Gaudio and Bob Crew. And I hadn't met Gaudio. Like I just sang his song for him.
Was Crew there also or no? Bob
Crew was not there. I did meet Bob Crew later on, but he was not in the audition. Yeah, that's how I met Bob, was singing his song for him. And so Ron loved that. And then I just read a bunch of different parts, and my agent called a couple days later and said they're going to offer you an offstage swing, but you are going to cover, I guess on the road, I covered 7 tracks.
Wow.
God bless.
Yeah. And so that was going to be the
7
second
auditions for 7 tracks.
Yeah, right. So it was
get 7 auditions, you get 7 different tracks, and this is where all of them start.
Yeah, it was 3 years after my first audition that I actually passed. But yeah, I covered. I think I was the first person to ever cover Tommy, Nick, and Bob. We didn't really end up being the second national tour. We ended up being the original Chicago company. So we did play San Francisco for 5 months at the Curran, and then we opened in Chicago after that.
Right.
But yeah, I covered Tommy, Nick, Bob, the Barry Belson track, the Knuckles track, which only exists on the road, does not exist on Broadway.
Right.
I covered Norm, and I covered Joe Pesci.
The tallest Joe Pesci.
Yeah, really.
I think I do hold that title. I think I'm the tallest person to ever go on as Joe Pesci on Broadway.
There you have it.
6'1".
So how did that happen? Like, how was it playing Joe Pesci? Yeah.
So I mean, I was basically like emergency only. Will the 6'1" guy go on as Joe Pesci, right? And it happened twice in Chicago and twice on Broadway. And then it happened 2 more times in Chicago. I think I was also the first person to ever do a split track in Jersey Boys.
Right. You did Joey and Barry Belson in the same show, right? Yeah. And we'll get to that. But
it was ridiculous because so Dom Nolfi, who was playing Tommy on Broadway, I'm 3 inches taller than him. So Dom is 5'10", I'm 6'1". So I would just have to like squat down and like just be like as short as I could be, going like, Tommy, I got your 4th guy. Yeah. I wanted them to like let me keep my Joey jacket when I left, because I was like, who else are you gonna put this on? Like no one with my wingspan will ever play this role again. But yeah, that was, it's this crazy thing about swinging, right? Like you get thrown on in roles that you would never even get an audition for, like much less be cast in,
Right.
You're
right. That's a very interesting phenomenon.
That's kind of been not the theme, but the amazing thing about this podcast. We've been getting something like 6 hours with these people that you wouldn't even get 5 minutes.
Let me tell you this. So I listened, the 2 episodes of yours I've listened to were part 2 with Ron Melrose. Okay. And I listened to the Chris Jones one because that's the most recent one you did.
Yeah.
And when I listened to part 2 of Ron Melrose, I was like, oh, these guys aren't playing around. Like these guys know more about the show than I do. You guys hit this at a good time, because I think at least a lot of us who did the show a long time ago, we're so removed from it now in terms of numbers of years. That is so much fun to revisit that time and to talk about it. It really is.
It is for me too, Jake. I'll tell you, I was writing for the blog for so many years. until really 2015. And I spoke to an awful lot of people, not getting into the specifics of what you're getting into right now, but it's really helped me reconnect and, revisit a really great time in my life. And
Mhm.
that includes you, because it's been years since we were in contact, really.
Absolutely. I think the last time I saw you was it the closing night party?
Yes,
Probably.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Now, did you have put-ins for all of your tracks?
No. So I never had a put on Broadway.
What is the put in? Can you tell me
Oh,
again?
sorry. For all of our listeners, a put-in is when you're a swing or when you're an understudy, and when you're lucky, you get to the people. No, when you're lucky, when you're lucky, you get a rehearsal on stage, teched with some costumes.
You got a rehearsal.
Yeah, you got a rehearsal. I figure you could be 150, maybe two. So, and so that's what a put-in is. Basically, an on-stage tech rehearsal where you run through all the big changes, basically through the whole show. And am I correct?
Yeah. So you do. Yeah, you get to do the whole show with the costume changes, with the dressers, with all the automation. With like the drum kits moving around, the set pieces flying in and out, and you get to do it with the full cast. You're usually they're not required to be in costume, but you get
right.
to
Right. I think we've heard stories
cast.
where the principals will wear like a blazer just so that they can keep that feel. Because I know, especially with Jersey Boys, even in rehearsal, they always wanted the guys in blazers and
you
shoes
guys
and pants.
Richard Hester ripped me a new one in Chicago. We have been doing the show for a while, so we've gotten pretty comfortable with understudy rehearsal. We're like, come on, we've been on in these roles a billion times, like we've got it. And he got mad at us for being at understudy rehearsal in shorts.
Who wears shorts?
So yeah, we got a strict talking to about not showing up at understudy rehearsal in shorts.
Okay. Well, hey,
he was right. He was right. We shouldn't have been doing it in shorts. We're not ever going to do the show in shorts. But
next time you're going to get an equity fine, okay, Jake?
Oh no, God forbid.
So how many companies were you a part of, Jake? 2?
Just 2. So the original Chicago company and the Broadway company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Though I did the show in 3 cities because the Chicago company.
And you played Bob G on Broadway.
Did you marry Emily during the time you were in Jersey Boys?
I did. So Emily and I got married in between the time that I moved from the Chicago company to the Broadway company. We got married. We honeymooned in Italy. We had already booked the whole thing. It was all paid for. And they wanted me in rehearsal a week before we were supposed to get back. And so I called Richard Hester and just like pleaded with him. And he's like, wait, we're just talking about a week? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's fine.
I can just imagine you sitting on a gondola in the middle of the river with your script.
I know. I tried not to think about it while we were on our honeymoon, and then
of course.
Once we got on the flight back home, oh man, I was just running through all the tracks in my head. And,
that's our song. Oh, what a night!
Yeah. Eventually, so I didn't mention this. Like throughout all of my time in San Francisco and Chicago, I was flown back to New York multiple times to audition to be a season in another company. So like they brought me in to read Nick for the original Las Vegas cast. Excuse me. They brought me in to read Bob. That one went really well. Our final preview in Chicago, Drew Galen called out, and the whole creative team was there, and they all requested that I go on as Bob.
Yo,
and
talk about pulling through for Jake Speck, yo.
And that was.
There you go.
I remember not feeling the best about that performance, but like good enough, you know. I think I put so much pressure on myself because I knew they were all there, and I was like, "This is it, this is it." So I even remember bringing Richard his Starbucks and him making a joke of me. He's like, "I guess what this means, I'll just have to make you a season in one of these companies someday." But
a tete-a-tete.
There was always sort of this insinuation that was going to happen for me, and I had been in New York really recently. They had brought me in to read and sing for Bob. I don't know if that was for Vegas or I can't remember which company. It's been too long, but it went really well. I felt great about it. Like I sang the songs great, I read great. And then after that, Daniel Reichard was leaving. And so they flew me in to audition for Bob to replace Daniel Reichard. And guys, it was like, I honestly, I still get upset when I think about it. Like I was not feeling well. It was another it was like deja vu of the other auditions. That this time I was in the room for Bob, and I warmed up at the hotel. I knew I was at like 80% vocally, but the notes were coming out, like I was hitting them. But I got in the room and I was just shot, and I remember like I just didn't have it, and like Ron was like, "Come on, no, let me vocalize you. I'm gonna play at the piano. You're part of the family." Like, and I remember saying the words. I was like, "I'm so embarrassed. Like, I feel like you guys are sitting here going, how many times has this guy been on in this role?" And it was like one of the worst auditions or at least in my mind, it was one of the worst auditions I've ever given. I got through the songs, but like they weren't good. Like I was screaming to get those G's to come out. Like it was awful. And so I thought, well, I guess that's that. Like I'm not going to be a season. And that was before they moved me to Broadway. So then they moved me to the Broadway company, and it was so Sebastian Arcelus took over for Daniel Reichard. And so I went on several times in the role, on Broadway. And then Sebastian took a leave of absence, sort of an unexpected leave of absence from the show. And so I went on, we weren't sure how long it was going to be. So I went on for like a couple of weeks just as the understudy, which is awesome, by the way, because when you understudy on Broadway, you get double your pay when you're on for a principal role.
Right.
Yes.
Wow.
And but there's also like a rule that like you can't go on as an understudy for a certain amount of consecutive weeks until they had to put you on a principal contract. And so they weren't sure how long Sebastian was going to be out. And it was like the end, like getting towards the end of the second week. And we still were unclear on communication about how long is this going to be. And I came into the stage manager's office for the matinee to say, hey, what's up? I'm here. And I walked in and Ron Melrose was there. And two of our lead producers were there. Michael David was there.
Oh shit! Head of Dodgers Theatrical. Richard
Hester was there, and I was like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And I could tell like the room was just kind of like, it wasn't standoffish, but it was just sort of, there was an air in the room that was just kind of like whatever. And I was like, okay, it was great to see all you guys, and I'm gonna go get ready. And like I'm walking up the stairs, and I was like, this is my audition. Like this is my audition. There's no other explanation for why all of them are here today. And so I somewhat wish I didn't know that they were there, but I did.
Yeah.
Sure.
I felt really good about the show.
Okay.
And
good.
It was literally the next morning my agent called and said, so they're going to give you the principal contract for the duration of
however long
this ends up being. So I was
nice.
right. Like that was my audition.
Oh, that's good.
And so though it didn't really look the way I ever thought it would.
Yeah.
And it was for a specified period of time. There was something about that felt really good to be like, you know what? I did get to play Bob Gaudio like on Broadway for real, in the role with the principal contract in the playbill.
And something good about having change in your pocket that doesn't jingle.
There you go.
Exactly.
I think this is the perfect time to play a game and just kind of like put all the pieces together.
Sure.
So we have two games. We have Finish That Monologue and we have Guess That Season. So we'll give you a random, very niche line from the script, and then you'll tell us if it was in a spring, summer, fall, winter.
But guys, it's been over a decade. I'm going to fail miserably.
Before we do that, let's just take a short little break.
Sure.
We'll be right back. And we're back.
We're back.
We're back. Hi,
with
guys.
We're back with Jake Speck.
Jake Speck.
With,
and Howard
the
Tucker.
Best, the coolest sounding name is Jake Speck. I think.
The spectacular.
Oh, see, that's kind of you to say that. I have a friend who's a writer who she's actually written several novels, and she said she always thought my name sounds like a PI, like a private investigator.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, that could
absolutely.
be.
So she was like, if I ever write,
Well, obviously we have the two Jakes. You remember that with
yeah,
Jack Nicholson?
yeah. So she said if she ever writes a novel that has a PI in it, she's going to name him Jake Speck PI.
You saw Mike McGlone's comment, and Mike McGlone liking our prior podcast. Mike's movie, The Bone Collector, through the whole
Oh, yeah.
movie, the chief suspect was named Howard. And,
Hey!
I blame Mike for not correcting the director. Of course, it was somebody else who actually, committed the murders. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's very funny.
When we, the original Chicago company, were in San Francisco, we were the cast that flew to LA and performed the tribute to the Sopranos on the Emmy Awards.
On the Emmy
Yes,
Awards.
uh-huh.
Hey, so you did
Which
that
is
performance.
Really awesome. I was like fake playing the trombone. That's what I was doing.
Oh,
Okay.
They were fake playing the instruments during the Can't Take My Eyes Off You, correct?
Not all of them.
Not all of them. Some of those were actual band members. But
oh, really?
Those of us that were cast members were up there. We're not actually playing the instruments.
And at the beginning, and I believe, were they actually playing the guitars? Because I believe Christian Hoff told me he was at one point.
Yes.
And
so,
even Nick Dramard, when he was on tour, he was still playing guitar.
Yeah, but Jake, please explain. Yeah.
Probably it's okay. It likely could have changed now in other companies, but the entire time I was in the show, both in Chicago, in San Francisco, Chicago, and New York, Tommy was plugged in and actually played, and Norm had to actually play, and Hank. All three of those cast members all actually played the instruments.
Okay.
When we were on the road, the Knuckles track also played drums, but on Broadway, the Norm track played drums too. The Norm track played drums and guitar.
Drums and bass, right? Or drums and guitar?
Drums and guitar.
Okay.
For Norm, and then the Hank track. Did he play bass too? I'm confusing companies now. But Hank had to play the mandolin too in the pizza scene.
In the pizza scene.
But whenever I was swinging, we wouldn't actually be plugged in. We would just have to look like we were playing.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I do play guitar enough so I could make it look real.
Yeah.
But here's a funny story. I don't play bass. Okay. The first time I was on as Norm, it was in San Francisco, and it was with Steve Gouveia was playing Nick.
Yeah.
And so it's the variety trio when we were doing Apple of My Eye.
Yeah.
And it introduced the band, and I hadn't had much experience playing electric guitar. I play like acoustic guitar, and so when he introduces the other Nick, like he has that little slide on the guitar he does. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that has to be live. Like that can't be mine. Like you're actually turned on for that. And I don't know what I did, but the sound that came out of that guitar was not what it should have been. And and I saw Steve like, oh gosh, he was struggling to keep it together. And we got off stage. He said, that was some very interesting music, Marty, quoting the Back to the Future.
Yes. Yes, Marty.
Your kids will get it.
Yeah.
Your kids will get it.
Well, that fits because the variety trio, like they're meant to be younger and experienced. So I think that works. That's
and
fine.
no one ever showed me how to do it. Like I realized as I'm singing Apple of My Eye, oh, I don't know how to do that. I'm about that.
No.
I don't know how to do that.
Oh no.
When you're not from New York, you think, oh my gosh, everything it's like New Yorkers, yes, rigid, detailed. It's like, yes, of course you are, but some things you just have to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very.
And
unlikely.
The valuable thing about it was A, I was never bored, and B, like it makes you fearless as a performer. When you just have to be thrown on and go for it, and you've got a full house of people on Broadway paying ridiculous amounts of money to see the show. It's an adrenaline rush, but you just figure it out, because if you're going to be wrong, you should be strong and wrong.
Strong and wrong, man.
If you're timid, you're going to look stupider, or more stupid. Excuse me, stupid is not.
Okay. Well, plus and with all of your experience, I'm sure that gave you such a sense of empathy and grace for when you became the executive director at AD Players. Yes, if it's okay, if we can talk about that first before the game.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So there's so much about it. But could you walk us through your when you founded Studio 10 and how you got into everything where you are now?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief because that's a lot that happened. I jokingly refer to this time in New York as my quarter life crisis. When I realized I didn't necessarily want to do 8 shows a week on Broadway forever.
Okay.
When
you were 25?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I was 27 at this point.
Okay, yeah, we're 25 right now. Yeah. Well, we thought about it too. It's a lot, yeah.
Well, and I got married, and Emily and I wanted to have kids, and we were just trying to figure out what we were going to do. And I actually went back to school for a little while I was in the show. Of course, like at the time I was swinging, and so I had a lot of time when I wasn't on. And then, like the second I committed to going back to school, I got moved into Bob Gaudio. So
of course,
that's exactly how it works.
It's exactly how it works. But
what did you study?
I was basically just finishing up my bachelor's. So
okay,
it was actually fun. Like a lot of the courses that I had to fulfill, I could do stuff that I really enjoyed. Like I took a Shakespeare class and a film class and several other things, just sort of working towards finishing my bachelor's.
Where were you doing your bachelor's?
At the new school.
Oh, the new school.
New school. New school. Okay.
So you did your 2-year conservatory at AMDA, and then you did your BA. Was it a BA or BFA? It
was a BA, but I never finished it actually.
Oh, okay.
So even after you went back.
Yeah. Which I still someday want to finish it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, long story short, I literally had a dream that I was running a professional theater company in Nashville with a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Matt Logan, who was also from Nashville, who, guys, the world is so small, who also worked for Tara Rubin for a while as a reader and was the reader in all of my final callbacks for Jersey Boys.
Are you serious?
Who I've known since I was 14. So I had this dream that he and I were running this theater, and I didn't really think anything of it, but I could not stop thinking about it. And I emailed him one day, like a novel of an email, and just was like, I just need you to tell me that I'm crazy and that you would never do this so I can move on with my life.
You Rick Ellis'd him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he called me and he said, you're never going to believe this. Like, I just got out of like a 2-hour-long lunch with Edie Orr, who's a woman that we both knew in common, who just spent 2 hours trying to convince me that I need to stay in Nashville and start a professional theater company here. Because he was planning on moving back to Los Angeles. He had lived in New York for a while and was going to go back to LA where he went to college. And so long story short, we started a bunch of conversations and ended up actually doing it and starting Studio 10 Theater Company, along with Philip and Marguerite Hall, which are an amazing couple who live in Nashville, but were in New York for a long time. Marguerite is like one of the most stupidly talented people I've ever seen in my life. She, back in the day, she was the original, she was Rapunzel on the first national tour of Into the Woods.
Oh,
wow.
shit.
Oh, wow.
She was in 2 Broadway shows that were like total flops. One was The Wind in the Willows, the musical. And one was Marilyn, which was the actual Broadway musical about
Marilyn. Yeah, I think
Doug Crawford was in that, or you know, was auditioning for that. I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead, man.
But anyway, they helped us. So we started Studio 10, and it was crazy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, to start a professional theater company from scratch. We built that company from the ground up over 7 years and got to do some incredible things. And we were the first regional company in the history of the Tennessee Performing Arts Center to produce a show on their Broadway series, along with all the Broadway tours from New York, which was a huge deal for us. And I got a phone call from a search firm who was doing a search for my current position, and initially told them I wasn't interested. I was like, I started a company in Nashville. Like, my wife has a great job here. Like, we're happy here. And one thing just sort of led to another, and it became such a great opportunity that I just felt like I couldn't say no to it. And it was attractive because Studio 10, even though it was a labor of love, like by the time I left, we still only had like maybe like 10 full-time staff members. We were still wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of things. And 80 players in the George Theater, I mean, they had this brand new stunning $20+ million facility, a much larger staff. And so, yeah, it was one thing led to another. And we just kind of felt like, hey, how often do these kinds of opportunities come along? And so came down here in August of 2017 and moved to Houston the week before Hurricane Harvey. So that was fun.
Oh, okay.
we escaped unscathed, thank God.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I was just given a tremendous opportunity to sort of take this company that's been around for over 50 years. But the founder of the company was very sick and old. She was in her 90s. She passed away just a few months after I got here, and was sort of able to just sort of re-envision the next 50 years of this theater, and had this gorgeous space to do it in. And so it's been tremendous. Of course, COVID has been absolutely crazy to be running a theater organization during COVID, but Houston's been very kind to us. My wife and I get the chance to work together sometimes. She's a brilliant director and choreographer. And so she directed and choreographed West Side Story at our theater, which was
wow. I'd love to meet her.
And she's got some other things on the horizon here that she's going to be directing once everything reopens up.
So let's get back to Jersey Boys for a second. Let's hang on to what we've got. Just don't let go, girl. We've got a lot. So we wanted to do something special where we wanted to break down Monologue with you, Jake Speck, Mr. Sir. So we wanted to.
I got my old script out just so I could actually read the monologue and remember it.
So you know what? Let's go to Uncle Nick. Let's go.
Gosh, so you're changing it up on me now. I'm actually gonna have to read this.
Let's go to Uncle Nick. Nick has told the group that he's out, right? So, what do you remember the first time you played Nick?
Yeah, it was in San Francisco.
So what was going through your head that entire time? Like, let's just start there. Like, what was going through your head as you were playing Nick?
You know, I think in that moment, in that monologue, I told you guys the story about my audition for the La Jolla production. I remember like going right back there in that monologue. And it's funny enough, Nick was the last season I went on for. Like I'd already gone on as Tommy and I'd already gone on as Bob. Wow. But Nick was the first season that I auditioned for. And so I had kind of a moment when I was up there. I was like, oh my gosh, here I am. Like I am now in this show. And my mind went right back to that first audition with Des. And I was like, I'm now delivering that monologue on stage in this role in front of 1,200 people here in San Francisco. Nick is a really fun role to play. I mean, they all have their unique challenges, right? And there are things that I love about all of them. It's one of the things that I was just grateful that I got the opportunity to be a swing, because I got the opportunity to sort of be able to put on all of those guys. And Nick is so quiet and so just sort of internalizes everything and introverted. And that was really fun to play around with.
That scene in the conference room there with Chip.
Yeah. And that's a blast. That was a blast to do as well. But it was fun to get to play around with that, having already been on as, Tommy and Bob, who were, especially Tommy, is much more boisterous and sort of extroverted and out there, to be able to play around with sort of the nuances of Nick. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I loved it. I loved playing all of them.
Well, was there a certain approach you had to Nick? Because, and we talk about this all the time, we have a soft spot for Nick's character because I feel like we know the least about him, but you learn so much with watching every different performance. So was there a certain way you would walk, or maybe like shuffle your feet, or do different things with the drinks at the bar? Any little quirks like that you found?
Yeah, I definitely tried to, and this is interesting, right? So when you're understudying, there is a certain expectation that you're going to sort of stay within the boundaries of what the person who is cast in the role proper is doing, right? Doesn't mean you can't make some of your own choices, etc. But like, that's sort of the expectation there. I'll actually never forget when I moved into the role of Bob proper, Wes Tyler came to see the show, who was Dez's assistant and sort of, like Richard, was somewhat in charge of, checking in and just making sure the show is maintaining its integrity. And he came to my dressing room and he said, okay, so let's talk about the character, because this is yours now. You don't have to just do what Sebastian does, or like, and it was an interesting concept to me, because I was like, oh wow, like I never thought of it that way. I never felt like I was just trying to impersonate Sebastian and make all of his same choices. But it was nice that it was like, no, I'm giving you the freedom to make this your own. But with Nick, oh yeah, I really sort of latched on to, it helped me to latch on to some of those sort of OCD things. And the way that, you sets up the drinks. And I remember always like fixing my clothes, making sure the buttons were right. Like I would find those little touchstones of Nick's sort of obsessive compulsive thing. I remember latching onto those, and those helping sort of differentiate him a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's a weird dude. Nick Massi. And he's the only one that I never got to meet. I got to meet Frankie and Bob and Tommy.
And so when we get to this monologue, of course, you said before, like this is, I mean, like Des told you, this is the first time, like in your audition, this was the first time you've said anything. And this is and it was interesting that they made this choice in the movie, that they had Michael Amenda say this monologue to Chris Walken. But this whole time we're hearing him say things, he's like, I've been pretty quiet up until now. But the difference is he's telling the audience, but he's still not defending himself.
Yeah.
Defending himself to the team, to the group. And it's not until, of course, he blows up in Jip's basement. But even that, he sits down and he buttons his coat up again. I'm back. I had my explosion, but now I'm back and I'm going to keep silent again. And Frankie keeps shutting him up. And then instead of saying anything, he just slams his head on the table. And now we come to his last monologue, the last one before the finale. And again, he's opening up, but not opening up to the rest of the group. And I think that just makes this monologue just a little bit, this direct address, a little bit more significant.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think he is intentionally left a bit mysterious, because I mean, you hear it throughout the end of the show. Like Frankie, it bothers Frankie for the rest of his life. He can never figure out why Nick would walk away. And he could have been Don
Costa.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so I think that Rick and Marshall did a brilliant job of sort of leaving the audience somewhat in that void as well, of never really understanding why he was the way he was and why he chose to leave. I've known people like that in my life, in terms of like just have brilliant capabilities as an artist, but for whatever reason they don't want it. But it is interesting that he chooses to sort of confide in the audience and sort of reveal this thing to him that he's not even saying to the guys.
Yeah. Well, I have a question just for you with that, because the whole show we talk about, and Richard Hester mentioned this too, how everyone has a different definition of success. So what is it, when it comes to the fame and just like staying in the band for longer? I actually did a poll on my Instagram. I was curious with people, and I asked them, I was like, do you want to be famous? Yes or no? And more than half said no, which is so surprising to me. So then it was a follow-up question. So, okay. So but for the work that you do you want to be recognized, or would you rather be recognized more at a local level or a national level? And a lot of people still said local. And I just thought that blew my mind, because I know for a lot of us, in this call right now, like you do want to have to reach as many people as you can.
Sure.
But so with your experience doing like all of it. You know, so you've been on a Broadway stage. Now you're really honing in on the Nashville community and bringing people to Nashville. How do you see success for you? And did that change your perception of Nick as time went on?
Even looking back now.
That's interesting to relate it to Nick.
Or all of them. Yeah.
Well, no, but now that you say that, yes, I can see. I talk about this even in the show that Emily and I put together. I've learned to never say never in my career, because every professional opportunity, once I got outside of New York, every professional opportunity I have ever had looked absolutely nothing like I thought it would look. Mm-hmm. And I think my dreams morphed along the way. I never ever thought I would leave New York City. And then after that, I never ever thought I would leave Nashville. If you would have told me back when I was, just first starting Jersey Boys, that I would leave New York and start a theater, I'd be like, you're crazy. I would never do that. But as I've done those different things, like now with where I am in my life, and I'll be 40 in a couple months.
Happy early birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I really just want to do good work with good people. Mm-hmm. And I don't care where that is. I'm less concerned with the accolades or how the industry views it, or how my peers view it, or, that, it doesn't mean as much because it's not in New York or it's not on Broadway. There's great work and great art being created all over this country, including on Broadway, obviously. But I guess to relate it back to the show and back to Nick, I feel that a little bit, because the things that were the most important to me when I was 25 are not the same things that are the most important to me when I'm now at 40, sure, or nearly 40. And of course I have a family now, I have kids. But like I said about even performing, like I still love doing it. I still get up there every couple of years, but oh my gosh, back in my 20s, that's all I wanted to do all the time. Just get me on stage, get me on stage, get me on stage. And now I find fulfillment in other things, not just being on stage, so I can understand his desire to step away from something like that, and the lifestyle that comes with it, and the pressure that comes with it, and constantly needing to deliver, and all these things that he says about staying in the hotel rooms and the tiny little bars of soap. And honestly, I don't think I ever would have done.
You can't even see it.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure I would have done really well touring. I never really legitimately toured, even with Jersey Boys, I was sort of in long sit downs, in places. But I would say I define success for myself now very differently than I defined it even 10 years ago, certainly 15 or 20 years ago.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I think another question that comes with that is, like, let's say you make a choice, you make a decision, you do something, and it's like, oh, what if people are going to judge me based on that? Like, what are people going to think if I do this? What are people going to think if I decide to produce that, or if I decide to leave and do this?
Right. From your marketing perspective, like do you take perception into account?
It's like none of us were saints. You sell 100 million records, see how you handle it. So like what Gia was saying, there's the perception of it. So how does that come into play for you, and how can you relate it back to Jersey Boys?
Oh gosh, well, I think it's some of what I just said, of just, we had this idea in our heads as a young actor of like what success is, and it's that Broadway credit, right? That Broadway credit is everything. I've got to get that on my resume. If I can say that I was on Broadway, that is what, even people who aren't in this business, at least they know what that is. And so that is defined as success, right? Mm-hmm. And I hate that, because yes, it is a really awesome thing. Yes, it is a really special thing. Yes, it was my dream. Yes, I got to live that dream. And it has opened so many doors for me, as I shared with you, like I told Rick Ellis. I was like, those were the magic words. I was in Jersey Boys on Broadway.
I was in Jersey Boys on Broadway. 8 words.
But at the same time, some of the most phenomenal artists I have ever known in my life have never stepped foot on a Broadway stage, mm-hmm. And some of the professional projects that I am the most proud of that I have gotten to participate in were not on a Broadway stage. And I saw, I was looking at like, Facebook shows you your memories from that day, how many years ago. And I saw something recently, like it was when the Oscars were on, and it was maybe a couple of years ago that I had posted something like specifically talking to young actors and young artists that I had just watched, the Oscars, and that you have to define success for yourself. Do not let anybody else, do not let the industry define success for you. And we live in a culture and a society where we put so much value on whatever that thing is. If it's Broadway, if it's a film, if it's you were nominated for something or whatever, to find your joy in the work itself. And that is so much easier said than done, right? Because we all care about those things. Of course we do. We care about the accolades. We care about how people perceive, what we did. But I think, and I have to admit too, it's like, easy for me to say I got to accomplish some of those dreams and goals for myself, right? Like I lived it, I was there. But at the same time, I think I have learned, as perhaps Nick learned, and certainly Bob learned. I mean, I have so many parallels with Bob. Like I feel, but obviously I've never had the career that he had, but in terms of being a performer and then learning more about the business and then stepping away and going, wow, I think maybe this is what I'm the best at, and this is what I should be doing. I get that. I get walking away and defining success differently and finding other things that make you happy and fill that place in you that you once thought only this could fulfill.
Right.
And then being able to help other people, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, helping that person build that solo career, or helping that person book that next big audition, or helping that person open that next big theater.
It's all about paying it forward, always, and showing up for people.
And to your point, my career went from Jake Speck, the actor, who could only do what he could do as a performer, and was reliant on the producers, the directors, or whatever, to give him the opportunity to be in said show, to do this, to Jake Speck, the producer or theater executive, that now that world has expanded so much bigger, and I have the opportunities to create art. And we have a whole educational program that we run. We have a Arts for All program that we do for underserved families and for kids with special needs. And it's just, though it's not Broadway, I feel like my reach and my influence is so much wider now than it was as a performer in New York, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
It's beautiful.
There's
Thank
so
you
much,
for all you do at your company.
Yeah, seriously. There's so much amazing. You talk about doing theater with and for special needs. I participated. Me and my sister. She still does. But for about 10 years, me and my sister both participated with a company called Exceptional Theater Company, which they have branches all around the United States, where they get a group of special needs adults and kids together, and they put on theater, put on talent shows, beautiful things. Some of the best work that it's just mind blowing, and to give, to make an equal opportunity for everyone, something so special. My sister, she's special needs. I was a shadow, and I was their tech director for a little bit, but it's just such a special thing to witness that and to be a part of that.
That's amazing. My sister as well. I think I mentioned her earlier.
Yeah.
And when I was at Studio 10, we did some sensory friendly performances that we made free for the special needs community. Those are some of the most meaningful things I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
And we were about to implement our first sensory friendly performance here before COVID happened. But yeah, and those are some of the things I'm talking about. Like I've found passion and fulfillment in some other areas, and it's not all about just the performance career anymore. Even though I still love to do that, you know, it's about more than that.
But there's more to it. And, you know, I think that is a perfect place.
Beautiful place to wrap up. Thank you, Jake Speck and Howard Tucker. Thank you so much for coming in the Zoom studio. And let's give a huge salute
Cheers
to Jake and Howard, and follow Jake Speck on social media.
And the AD players.
Check out AD players. Check out Studio 10. If you live near them and you're listening to this, you're watching this, go check out whatever season they've got coming on. Knowing Jake, whatever season they got coming on very soon. Knowing Jake Speck for these last week and a half that we've been in contact through Howard. Thank you again, Howard, for putting us in contact. We have learned so much about you. He's such a in Hebrew. We like to the Hebrew word for soul is a neshama, and to call someone a special neshama, it's like a really, you know, it's a beautiful. So you have a beautiful neshama, and you do a lot of great work. And we know you have a huge impact in the Jersey Boys community.
A wonderful mitzvah as well. And Jake, thank you. As I said earlier in this podcast, you know, I've been friendly with a lot of the actors, and we've spoken a lot during Jersey Boys. Since Jersey Boys, we've gone out, but I didn't know a lot of this stuff. And, you know, what you've said about auditioning and about the early days, it's just giving me a great education as well. So thank you.
Hey, it was my pleasure. It was fun for me to talk about. Like I said, the further I'm removed for it, the more fond my memories are, or maybe more faint, because I don't remember the script like I used to.
Well, stay tuned for Jake Speck Part 2, where we will definitely dive deeper into the script and into your
and a salute.